Okay, welcome to South Texas Youth Soccer's webinar series. Today we're excited to welcome one of the leading innovators in the world for technical development in young children. Tom Byer was born in the Bronx and grew up in New York State. And after a standout high school career, Tom went on to play college soccer at Ulster County Community College and then on to the University of South Florida. After college, Tom became the first American to play top-level professional soccer in Japan when he signed for the JSL team Hitachi. But after his playing career ended, Tom moved into the coaching side of the game and started to concentrate on the technical development and introducing Cover schools in Japan. He spent over 20 years traveling around the world, sharing his ideas with some of the largest names in the game. He's been a TV sensation in Japan. He's created various instructional DVDs, articles, and his own book, Soccer Starts at Home. Among other things, Tom is currently an official advisor to the Chinese government, where he oversees a grassroots program that includes 20,000 schools across China, and he has a daily time slot on the Chinese television focused on technical development of young players. Tom, it's an honor to have you on the webinar. I've seen your presentation multiple times over the last few years. I'm excited about this opportunity to share this message with a wider audience in South Texas and beyond, and looking forward to hearing the presentation.
Hey, Gareth. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm coming to you all the way from my home in Tokyo, Japan, where I reside. I've been here for many years, probably too many, but they haven't kicked me out yet. So I'm here. But it's great to be with you and have this opportunity to address your membership in Texas there. So. I guess we'll just go right into it, huh? Okay, so soccer starts at home. As you can see, the first screen is filled with lots of orange. I have an agreement, a 3-year agreement with the Houston Dynamo. And just to tell you a little bit of the story, because we have some time here, I was approached by Brian Ching, one of the big legends from the Houston Dynamo. This was a few years back. And Brian was seeking some advice from me about some things to do with young kids, and this subsequently resulted in a telephone call for about an hour. I remember that call, and during that call, Brian had said to me, I was in my home in Tokyo. He said, you know, the next time when you're in the States, we'd love to have you come by Houston. So I took Brian up on that. I'm never one for turning down an invitation. So I think it was probably that same year I wound up visiting Houston. And there was really no agenda other than I just wanted to introduce myself and this presentation here, that's the first slide, Soccer Starts at Home. So I wound up showing a full-blown presentation. This one's a little bit shorter. And I showed it to Brian, and Brian put me in a room with I think probably all of the academy coaches, and Paul Hollaher had just taken over as the new academy director, coming over from San Jose. So again, long story short is I guess I won them all over, because it culminated into signing a 3-year agreement with the Houston Dynamo. So the Houston Dynamo is the only MLS club in the country that we're partnering with, and we're very excited. And that really led to my first year of our agreement. And what the agreement is I come into Houston 4 times a year, usually quarterly, and I spend anywhere between 7 to 10 days there. And so the first year was really laying down the roots. And when I say laying down the roots, is what we were doing is we needed to put this program in front of as many people, especially influencers, in the state of Texas, and in particular, the area of Houston. And obviously that's how I got introduced to Gareth and some of the key people from the state association as well. To basically, what is this program, which I'm gonna go through, but to try to basically link up with as many different stakeholders in the game as possible. So it's been going very well. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what this program actually is. And the good news is that although this slide presentation goes about 14 slides, if you look at the top of my first slide right here, the HoustonDynamo.com/soccer starts at home. You can go to this website, which is the Dynamo website, and you will land on this page right here, Soccer Starts at Home, with this first top page. And I'm proud to say, according to the boys in the guys in Houston at the Dynamo, this is the most viewed page on their website. So we've already picked up a lot of steam here. We've got a lot of momentum. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a culture of understanding in the Houston and this whole kind of throughout Texas, to be honest with you, and understanding this isn't so much a soccer program with a big, thick curriculum. What it is it's more of a developmental message backed up with science and research that shows that the most successful countries in the world that develop players, they have a culture of development that starts much earlier than most. So traditionally, the approach to development is first time usually a child enters into organized play is usually around six years of age. It goes a little younger sometimes, but more or less 6 years of age in most countries in the world, first grade. So what we're saying is that actually, why wait to get started until you're 6 years of age, 6 years old? There's many things that you can do before that. So we'll get right into it. And these videos that you're going to see are videos of my children from a very young age and what I actually did with my kids. So again, this slide right here, starting at home. The non-competitive home environment provides comfort to very young kids. So what we found out is that, and from writing the book called Soccer Starts at Home, I was very lucky because I was approached by one of the foremost neuropsychiatrists in the world from Harvard University Medical School, Dr. John Rady, who I've learned so much from. So Dr. Rady, when he got involved with my work, he could explain to me more than I could the science behind what's happening. So while you're watching this, my son is just starting out inside the home, ball. Okay, but what's very important that I never really understood the science behind was how important the home was, how crucial. Like I put up here, the power of the home is a crucial developmental tool, and the reason is that the home becomes a very safe, protective environment where a child can basically do whatever they want. They can fail, they can have success. Nobody really cares other than the people that are inside the room there. But there's no pressure. My son's not battling 3, 4, 5, 6 other kids his age for one ball. So what we've done here is we're introducing a ball, a small ball for a small foot, in an environment that's very conducive to developing. So I'll go to the next slide here. And when can it start? It can start as early as you like. It can start as soon as a little child starts standing. Now, this is not my son, but I'm very fortunate because I've got literally networks around the world where people are sending me videos of their kids. This is a little boy. He's still in diapers. Might not even be 1 year old already. And again, just showing what's possible with a little child inside a home. You can see there's a little bit of an open space there. You don't want to be trying this with the coffee table right in the center of the room in case the child falls over. So there are some safety elements in play here as well. But it's basically more or less common sense parenting when you're looking after kids. But here's what's really happening. The home environment creates a very emotionally charged environment. And here's a kind of, I call it the gift for parents, is that while your child is playing inside the home, they're doing this really to try to seek mom and dad's parental approval, or you could call it validation, or you could call it just attention. So they're doing this to try to please the ongoing person who's watching. So what happens is the science behind it is that it creates this chemical electrical process in the brain, which is emotions. So whenever you can connect or create an emotionally charged environment, that's where deep learning, that's the stickiness in learning. You don't have to be a neuroscientist to understand this, but you do have to understand that the child is seeking that parental approval, of trying to please mom and dad, or it could be whoever the primary caretaker, could be a grandmother, grandfather, could be anybody, could even be an older brother or sister. But that creates this chemical, that creates this emotionally charged environment. And why is an emotionally charged environment important? Is because emotionally charged environments, that's where deep learning and long-term memory takes place. So what's happening is that when a child is playing, and this is my boy when he's a little bit more advanced, what's happening is that these are nerve cells that are firing every time that he's doing these movements. And nerve cells that fire together with other nerve cells, they wire together. So they create neural networks. So what's happening is that you're laying down the neural pathways from the brain to the feet that later on become very, very automatic. It's an unconscious process that happens here. And that's where the repetition is very important, because when you have repetition, it keeps firing over and over and over again, the neural cells. And again, here's the saying, cells that fire together, they wire together, and they become networks. And that's where the memory, that's where that stickiness takes place. So that's why it's important to be doing things over and over again. And that's why we've got all of these, what we call ball mastery exercises, for you to practice with your kids. So developing skill. It also gives a child a feeling of empowerment, which is very important. A child who's able to do something, that's self-belief. That's like if you're a parent and you're a parent watching this, you know, your child will yell out, "Mommy, Daddy, I can do it." That's a very powerful statement by a child when they're able to actually achieve something. So here, I'm going to go with the next one here. Now, this doesn't have to always take place inside the home. It can be outside as well. And what I found also is that it was very, very useful to be videoing my kids, because my kids want to see, and they want to see the playback. You can hear me talking a little bit maybe here, maybe you can't, but I'm just giving encouragement. I'm encouraging right foot, good boy, left foot, saying good boy, wow, you're doing great. He's 3 years old here. Okay, so videoing is very important. Now, I've got a whole library of other kids as well. This is little Jocelyn, whose father contacted me actually on Twitter when she was 4. This was 3 years ago. And her father put a program in place, and I'll just show you a little bit of Jocelyn. She's got tremendous, tremendous control with her feet. Now, it's also very important that parents set time aside every day to practice with their children. So this is a commitment. This is a commitment, but it also provides a very good opportunity for parents to bond with their children, because you're putting time aside. Maybe it's 10 or 15 or 20 minutes together with your child. And this dad, he's always videoing his daughter. He's editing it. He's putting music to it. So he's showing his daughter that he's committed. The mother as well is active as well. Both of them are. Just a couple more seconds, but Jocelyn is quite the little player now. So there you go. So again, just to reiterate a couple of key points, it's very important to set this time aside with your child to practice. It's tantamount to almost think of it almost like reading. Paul Holaher brings this up, the academy director at the Houston Dynamo, when we went into a meeting with the Department of Education for the Houston mayor's office. And the director there, she quickly said, "Oh, I get it. This is like tantamount to reading a book." So the little ball almost becomes the book. And as parents, we know that because in the early stages of development, we're often spending time with our children at nighttime reading a book. Well, this is the same thing, same kind of commitment. Now, this is an interesting video because this is from my project where I've done a lot of work in China. I've worked with many different organizations in China, but the Ministry of Education, this is a particular program that I designed for a particular school district in the Beijing school district area, where I oversaw a pilot that I designed for 5 elementary school first graders. And the reason this video is important because, as you can see, this is a pretty big kid here. He's 6 years old. Now he's just challenging himself, one player, one ball. And he's able to participate with his other friends. I'm going to do it over again because I want to talk about it. So this is very important because he believes in his own mind that he's a soccer player. So that's building self-confidence. That's building self-belief. One player, one ball. He's not having to battle and fight for the ball with other players. So this is really taking soccer to more of an individual pursuit. We all know that soccer is a team game. It's played on a big pitch with 11 teammates. But the important part of the game is that we have different elements of the game. And this is what we basically call the technical phase. This is very, very important to understand as parents because technical skills, think of it kind of as the DNA of a player. Technical skills are kind of, if you think about it with academia, it's like reading and writing. If you can't read and write, it's very difficult to start trying to, teach anything, right? So also think of it almost as a staircase. It's the first step. It's the first step in the staircase to basically advancing forward, right? So that's why when we study a lot of the great players from around the world, and excuse me, I've only got men here. I should really update this, but this was a particular special that I filmed for a World Cup broadcaster down in Australia that came to me before the last World Cup in 2018. And they had the broadcast rights to filming or broadcasting the World Cup. And they knew about my work or our work. And they said, is there some way that you can connect soccer starting at home with the star players? And I said, I sure can, because I had already done a lot of the research already. So what I'm showing here is that there's some common denominators when you look at the countries that develop the best players. And these are various countries: Eden Hazard from Belgium, Harry Kane from England, Toni Kroos, the Germany, Lionel Messi, Argentina, Neymar, Brazil, Paul Pogba, France, Rodriguez, Colombia, Cristiano Ronaldo, Portugal, and Luka Modric from Croatia. And there's one more that for some reason I left out here, which is Iniesta, Spain. So when you look, these are real hardcore, what we call soccer cultured countries. And when you really search and research, like I do a ton of research on lots of players, I found 2 common denominators. They're listed here on the right? The common denominators are they started engaging with a ball between the ages of 2 and 5 years of age. And also they credit their fathers and their mothers with their love for the game and their early success. So if you understand that, then you understand that as a parent, there's things we can do. I often talk about what we call the crossing over the line into organized play. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but again, as I emphasize, usually most kids don't join organized soccer until around the age of 6. So it's important. Okay, well, what is it that we can do before the age of 6, before our child joins the team? So that's where this whole soccer starts at home philosophy comes in. I have this slide up here because when I first started doing working with the Houston Dynamo, one of the very, very important points that I emphasized was that I needed the full buy-in from the entire club. And when I say the entire club, I'm not talking about just the guys, the coaches, which this is the picture of. All the way, the guy with the beard on the end there, that's Paul Holaher. The other guy to my right is Tab Ramos. The other guys are the assistant coaches. And so everybody needs to see our presentation of soccer starting at home. So that's why I get the buy-in. I presented to the president, John Walker, all of the key guys, Matt Jordan, the general manager. We've done presentations literally for the entire company. Just about everybody at the Houston Dynamo organization has seen this presentation because we're trying to create culture. And the Houston Dynamo, everybody from the people taking care of the grounds and cutting the grass, and the people that are selling tickets, or the people who are working in any part of the club, they need to understand. Now, here's some slides showing that we go around inside the community, inside the Houston and surrounding areas, and we're basically trying to engage with key organizations, key clubs. We've got a program with the Houston Dynamo, which is basically Partners in Development, it's called, and it keeps growing. And these are organizations that could have a few thousand players to just maybe 100 or 200, because it's important for us to engage as many clubs and organizations in the Houston area as possible, so that we can get everybody moving in the same direction, so that everybody understands that soccer skills can and should be taught at home. Now, there's also what we look at there's 3 different levels of the game. When I say levels, I'm talking about there's the entry level, that's where we are, pre-team, before a child joins a team. Then there's the competitive level. That's once your child has joined a team and they're training during the week, they're playing competition on the weekends, there's winning, there's losing, you're assigning positions to play, there's a coach, there's teammates, that's competitive. And then we have the elite space. Well, that's the Houston Dynamo, that's the Texas State Association that identifies, elite players or kids that are perhaps showing potential to become more advanced players. They're basically targeted into a certain pool. But again, we're talking about the entry level. That's where soccer starts at home is. We also have an outreach program where we go into schools, and we've got lots of different partners. These can be private schools, these can be public schools, these can be chartered schools, we've got a whole different array of different organizations that we work with. This is one particular school here where we have been sending coaches from the Houston Dynamo into the community, and they work with some of these kids during the week. It's usually an open and closed kind of period, could go anywhere from a month or 2 months or a couple of weeks, or we've got different various programs. But what this also gives us an opportunity to do is, before we start these programs at the school, we get access to the parents. The parents are key. We are dependent upon the parents for the success of this program in the Houston area. And that's why it's so important for us to go around and partner with the state association, such as we're doing here for this webinar, and also all the different various stakeholders of the game, because our whole goal in life is to try to engage as many as we can, parents, you parents that are hopefully watching, along with the coaches, along with the educators, along with the media, along with the different brands that invest in our great game to support the kids playing and the coaches coaching. So we have that ecosystem out there that we are trying to influence. Again, this is another presentation we did at a school. And those are mostly parents. There's also coaches in there as well. But again, we call them ignition events. And anybody watching that hasn't attended one of these events, please go ahead, contact the Houston Dynamo. Go ahead, contact Gareth at the state association here. We would love to come to your community. That's how the Houston Dynamo use me on my visits. I come out and I go right into the community and we hold these events. And we would love to come to wherever your community or your neighborhood is. Of course, we enjoy getting a big turnout as possible. We can do this presentation for as few as 30, 40, 50 people, up to as many as 300, 400, 500 people. So the more the merrier for us to get our message out. This is to show you my last visit. Literally, my last visit was right before the Houston Dynamo went into their preseason training. And this was Fan Appreciation Day. And I went into the stadium and I was greeted by the president, John Walker. And literally, this video I'm going to show you, I staged it. But when I walked in to the stadium on Fan Day, I was super impressed because this is what I saw. Not so much the Dynamo training, but up there on the board, the commitment from the Houston Dynamo to promote this program, Soccer Starts at Home. And I remember turning to John Walker and I literally, it was an emotional experience for me because I had been coming to Houston off and on for one full year, and to see this finally coming to fruition, the board, I'm going to go back to that, stop it here. But when I saw, sorry about that. When I saw the Soccer Starts at Home being promoted on the scoreboard there, that was very moving. That was very, very rewarding for me to see. And I turned to John and I said, sincerely, thank you, John, for putting that on the board. And he turned around to me, and I remember like it was yesterday. He said, listen, we got the whole buy-in. We're in. We are all in on this program. So it's just great to see that level of commitment from the Houston Dynamo. So hopefully we're going to be seeing this more when you come to games and also inside their match day program as well. But basically, hold on a second. I think that is the end of this presentation as we see it right here. Gareth, if we can, maybe I guess you can hear me?
Yep, definitely, Tom. I can hear you. Thank you for the presentation. If you have some time, we have a few questions here. I think that you covered some of these things, but maybe an opportunity for us to talk in a little bit more detail about them and to be able to kind of expand upon the things that we're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I covered a lot of the points. As you know, I mean, you and I have met several times already. And I want to emphasize how much we appreciate the support by personally yourself and a lot of the other administrators we've had the pleasure of meeting. Some of even your board members, some of Janae from who's also on the coaching side as well. And we're very, very appreciative to have you guys as partners helping us spread the word throughout Houston. So our hats off to you guys. You guys are very, very important in the whole cog in the wheel for what we're trying to do with the Dynamo.
I appreciate it. I mean, I believe in it. I agree with it. I've told people when I first saw your stuff years and years ago, I don't even remember when it was, before I was even working for the state association, that what you did, I did with my own two sons, not out of any other reason than I love the game. And when they started walking, I put a ball at their feet and just encouraged them to have a ball around the feet and a small ball and a house. And they both grew up with that. And I've seen their development from that and their love of the game and their comfort with the ball at their feet. And it makes such a big difference. There's still, if I was to walk out of my office right now, there'd be 6 or 7 balls all around the house.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I'm sitting in my living room here, right? So if I get up right here and just walk over, because my kids, we got balls all over the house, man. It's like just crazy. And these are some of the original balls that I used. My 2 boys now, the youngest is 11, the oldest is 14. But we still have the balls all around the house. And it's just good to have them. I think it's important too, because we're talking about the small ball and inside the home again. to reemphasize to parents, because we can't emphasize it enough, is that the first number one rule in this whole program is try to discourage kicking. And especially when it comes to with the small kids, because what you're doing is the natural reflex for any child is to kick a ball. That's just, I mean, when mom's pregnant, the child is already kicking inside the stomach. That's a natural reflex. So what we're trying to do is discourage it. Now, don't worry, because your child, trust me, from doing this for years and years and years, kids that develop the best ball mastery skills naturally become the best passers. They just do. You got to trust me on that one, because they have a better feel for the ball. They have a better first touch. They have, everything comes together. Everything comes together. So we try to discourage kicking inside the home. And what we try to do really from the beginning is try to instill an awareness of learning how to protect the ball. Protecting the ball is very key for kids when it comes, because it changes the trajectory for development. When a child pulls the ball back, and that's one of the core staple skills of our program, is using the sole of the foot, because it's teaching a child to protect the ball more than just give it away. So that's a very important point. And also just to make sure that when you're playing inside around the home, that it's safe, protective, kid's not going to fall over. When you're playing on a wood floor, my home happens to be a wood floor, or let's say linoleum where it's a little slippery, I recommend taking the shoes off, taking the socks off even, and let them play with bare feet. It's much more natural, but more importantly, it's a safety mechanism, because they're not going to slip.
Yeah.
They're not going to slip. That's very, very important as well. So sorry to jump in there, but I just wanted to get some of those points across.
No, I think those are great points. And I think it's, the value and, my first question, I think we've already kind of answered it, but, the first thing we introduce, how parents introduce their kids, other than putting balls around the house, and you touched on it in the presentation, but also that parental interaction that gives value to what's going on, encourages players, and like you said, in a safe environment within the home is kind of the key.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on, just another quick question for you here. So, and you touched on it again, but I think this is really important for the audience to understand, and why this is so important, and why, like, your program has been successful in Japan, and why China wants to do it. And I know you're doing it in India, and these other countries, they're not necessarily recognized as what we would term global soccer powers, right? And I think you, in one of your other presentations, I've heard you say many times about how only X amount of teams have ever won the World Cup, countries have ever won the World Cup. It's a small number. But because of that, why is this program so important in countries like the United States, where maybe we don't have a rich history of the game, and why it's so much more important for us to introduce this in a way in these countries, maybe that it's not necessary in England or Brazil or Germany or Italy or Spain or somewhere like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. And you're right. The interesting thing is that I've also been embraced by a lot of the big hitters in the game that I thought, which I was quite surprised, I thought wouldn't benefit as much as the less developing countries. But I've been invited to countries like Croatia that played in the World Cup final, right? Places, even Holland. I've been invited to Ajax, Dynamo Zagreb, Manchester United. So these countries, and it's a very good question, these are countries that are seeped in a very strong soccer culture. So these sorts of things, engagement with family from a very, very young age, happens naturally in those environments. But even those countries see the value of doing it intentionally. So the point is that, for example, and I've been so lucky, I've been presented literally, I've done this presentation so many times, but probably close to maybe nearly 100 federations in the world, and we've only got 211, so I've almost hit probably about 50 of them. I mean, 50 or 100, half of the 211. So what I figured out is that those countries, it happens in a very natural environment, but in our country, in America, or a country like China or Japan, these are more non-soccer countries. So there's been a lack of understanding of development. So when you look at, for example, a country like Brazil, or these Latin countries in particular, what happens is the child doesn't immediately fall in love with playing the sport. soccer, or football as it's called. They fall in love with the ball. So this is a very, very important point for parents to understand, and for what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do, Gareth, is facilitate a love for the ball. Who cares about the game? A little 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old has absolutely no idea of the context of playing the game yet, but they fall in love with the ball. So it's easier once the child falls in love with the ball and they have a relationship with the ball and they're comfortable, that's a key word, through ball mastery, then they're much more likely to fall in love with the game. So if you look at it on the opposite way, it would be tantamount to comparing it to trying to get kids in America to fall in love with playing soccer and the ball gets in the way because they haven't mastered it yet. And unfortunately, this is a sport that's played with your feet that unless you practice a ridiculous amount of time, it's very difficult to become good at playing soccer. That's the reality of it. So the earlier they start, the better.
Yeah, and I think, and to kind of go and expand on that, you know, one of the big challenges that we face in the United States is retention of players and their involvement in the game as they get older, because obviously lots of sports in the United States, lots of options for players, you know, and maybe parents didn't play the game, and so they're more likely to encourage other sports. But I think, you know, a lot of players become frustrated with the game because at an early age they're playing 99, 77, even 11v11 in some of these situations. I know Paul and I have shared horror stories of seeing young kids playing 11v11 and 9v9 at age 6 and 7 and 8. But this helps them in that there's a value in the ball, and they have confidence in what they're doing, and so I think that helps in the process. And ultimately, would you agree, helps in retention as they get older, because they've developed a certain skill set that allows them to continue to be players as they get older. They don't become frustrated as their athletic skills don't, you know, make them good players or what have you.
Absolutely. And again, maybe these numbers are a little bit outdated, but the Institute of Sport in Aspen came out with research and some numbers about a year or so ago. And here it is. 38.5% of American kids who play soccer in America quit playing by the age of 7, and then another 50% drop off by the age of 10. That's in soccer. Then in overall all team sports in America, 70% drop out by the age of 13. So I say to people, I have a pretty good feeling it's not the good kids that are quitting. And I mean that sincerely. So what happens is, and it's not a problem just in America. I said this on a stage in Russia before the World Cup. I was invited by FIFA to present on a panel discussion with the Secretary General of FIFA. And I got up and my first statement was, we call this the world's game, where millions of kids play, and we're failing millions of kids because a majority of kids that play soccer in many countries in the world are technically poor. So that leads, so here, and I'll give you a really good example. So imagine mom and dad watching right now. You've got a 6-year-old child. That 6-year-old child shows up to their first ever practice. That's a scary environment for a little 6-year-old, as you know, as parents. I mean, I know as a parent too, just letting my kid, they're always looking, where's mom and dad? So they're not very confident, right? But imagine they're showing up and they've come through our program, Soccer Starts at Home, where you parents have helped to get your kids off to a flying head start, as my good friend Todd Beams always says, a flying head start, and they're comfortable with the ball. That's a game changer. So when a child shows up to a practice, their first ever, when they're 6 years old, number one, they're the most popular kid because all the other kids figure out very quickly, wow, that kid's pretty good. So when the coach asks them to pair up 2 players to a ball, 3 players to a ball, they're all looking for the good kid. That's first. Number 2, when the coach wants someone to demonstrate, they're going to ask your kid to demonstrate, the kid who's the better kid. So now your child is getting an opportunity at leadership at the age of 6. So this is well-being. This is self-belief. This is, I can do it. This is massive. And I never really quite understood it until Dr. John Rady from Harvard Medical School, collaborating with me, started basically educating me about why this is so important. Because a child, once they can master a skill by the age of 5 or 6, let alone any skill, but a soccer skill with their feet, that's a big deal. And that they take in for the rest of their life. That they take that confidence into a mathematics class test. So these are very important points of why we need to also promote our sport, because there's that whole mind-body connection thing as well, where it basically helps kids. The whole cognitive side of the game that we know from our work with some of these neuroscientists.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that even in my own kids, right? The confidence of going to school for the first time and knowing that no matter what the school day is about, I'm good at something because I've got this comfort level with the ball. So recess, I've got friends because I'm good at something, and it creates that. And I think it carries over to the cognitive stuff as well. And then even longer term, right? We're talking about developing a culture. If we're developing kids that love having the ball at their feet, even if they don't go on to earn a living in the game or they don't go on to earn a college scholarship, they still love the game. They're going to be spectators. They're going to grow the game in this country. And that's a large part of it as well. And having a culture of people who love watching the game and even playing as they get older in life. So I think that's a key part. Last one here, and I think this is probably for the clubs and stakeholders and people like that. What steps do you recommend clubs take to implement this kind of thing? Sometimes I think the challenge is that, like you say, some of these players don't cross into playing competitive or being involved in a club maybe till they're 6, 7 even. Some of the clubs will have them at 4 and 5, but how do we reach out to those people, in younger ages and engage them, prior to coming into those leagues and those opportunities where they can develop a love for the ball, as you say?
Yeah, it's a great point. And you'd think, to be honest with you, that it's a pretty easy sell, especially in this day and age where we're all connected online and through social networking. But I'll tell you what, and if you ever heard of, the writer Gladwell, who wrote the book called The Tipping Point.
Yep.
Just because we're all at home with the lockdowns, I've been doing a lot more reading than I normally do. That I should be doing. So I started reading again The Tipping Point, which is like a book that was put out a decade ago. Yeah. And really the whole point of The Tipping Point is how powerful word of mouth is. How powerful word of mouth is. So although we've got lots of things now, it's great because the Houston Dynamo slide, again, HoustonDynamo.com/soccer starts at home. We have an entire resource library. And it costs $0. It's completely free for everybody. That's why we're trying to get the word out. So what I would recommend to do with many clubs, and these are clubs that are they might not be dealing with kids 6, 7, 8 years old. It doesn't matter. Everybody needs to understand this culture of development that we're trying to create in the Houston area. So that's why I present to anybody that will actually listen, because everybody knows somebody that's got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, whether it's, a 60-year-old guy who's got grandkids, or it's, the single brother who's got the married sister that's got little kids. So everybody can benefit. That's why we need to get this thing out. But word of mouth is very important. Start with your own team. Make sure that your players' families are being driven to this content, or at least this awareness that this program even exists. And I'm quite confident that we're going to be able to turn Houston into a hotbed of players that are going to be able to enjoy the game. And again, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just about developing Houston Dynamo, U.S. national players, or the women's game as well with the Dash. It's about just giving kids an opportunity to succeed. And we know, of course, most kids aren't going to become professional players, but that's not the point. We want kids to grow up and love sport, love exercising, fitness, health, nutrition, all of it, so the kids and families can enjoy their life. And that's why it's so important. If I can go back real quickly on one other point, Garrett, and that is on this cognitive side. So when we because many people, for many years, I didn't understand. As a younger kid, I didn't really kind of understand when people use the word cognitive. What does that mean? Well, this is what's happening. We know now, because of the neuroscientist guys that we work with, that the cognitive benefit to ball mastery, here it goes. The part of the brain responsible for ball mastery, which is foot coordination, motor skills development, is the cerebellum. That's a part of the brain. You don't have to be a neuroscientist to understand, but there's a part of the brain called the cerebellum. That part of the brain has recently, by the neuroscience guys, because of technology, been found to be responsible for much more. What it's responsible for is thinking, remembering, controlling emotions, decision making, and here you go, reading. So those are very important things. So while you're teaching a little 2, 3-year-old inside your home to play with the ball with all the ball mastery exercises, that takes a certain degree of focus, discipline, and attention. That's basically slowing down the child. Most kids, if you picture when they got a ball, it's chaotic. They're running around. They don't have control of their body. They're kicking. They're falling over. No, we're trying to basically control more of them to be very, very, very composed. And the neuroscientists guys know that that has a knock-on effect for cognitive development. That basically is settling down. That's modulating and controlling the emotions of a child, which are very, very important. So these are very important reasons also that people need to be engaged and understand that, okay, my kid play ball mastery, okay, they might not even go on to become a soccer player. They might play baseball, basketball, volleyball, whatever. But that ball mastery seems to be a big game changer for our sport because it's the only sport in the world that's played with your feet. And the distance between the feet and the brain is a very long distance. So we very rarely have opportunities to build the neural pathways between the brain and the feet. So this is a very good, what they call cerebral training of the brain. And by the time a child is 6 years old, 80% of their brain is developed. So it's a very small window as well. So I just wanted to get that point in. That's a very, very important point for parents to understand.
That's awesome. Tom, thank you so much for taking the time. As always, it's enthralling. It's interesting. I always think I learn something. I know Paul says that every time he watches your presentations, but super powerful. I'm excited to see the future of players and the growth of the soccer community through programs like this and what powerful effect that can have in Houston, South Texas, and beyond. And looking forward to seeing that. But thank you again for taking the time all Japan early morning and coming on and doing this with us.
No, it's my pleasure. As I said, we value you guys are major, major partners of ours. And we're just so excited to have been able to convince you guys to get behind this. So I look forward to my next visit, which hopefully will be sometime in the summer when they lift the lockdown travel ban. I'll be back in the community and look forward to seeing you. So thank you for this opportunity to address your members.
Awesome. Thank you.